You might not have time for that introduction again.
Oh my God.
Well, shit. It is. And 7 minutes later, after we thought we were live, we actually are live.
Oh my God.
It is.
Thank you,
all right, we're going to have.
Lauren,
I just told some
being
embarrassing stories about Dan Klaidman.
Are you sure that's not for like the people behind the paywall? That's the premium part of this. No,
I think this is clearly you years ago hacked my Crowdcast account to prevent me from telling that story about you. No, for everybody who is just joining us, which is to say everybody, we went live 10 minutes ago, 7 minutes ago.
You have to tell that story again.
Except for the part.
Tell the condensed version of the story again.
All right, the condensed version of the story is Dan and I worked together at Legal Times when we were infants. He goes on to take a snazzy job at Newsweek. I succeed him as Justice Department reporter at Legal Times, and he gives me a call couple weeks into his tenure at Newsweek, and he says, Ben, can you give me contact information for this source of yours, which I cheerfully did because we were colleagues. And a few minutes later, I get a call from the source saying, hey, who the fuck is Dan Klaidman? And do you know he's like stabbed you in the back? He just called me and told me not to talk to you anymore. And so I called Klaidman and I said to him, what gives, man? And without missing a beat, just cheerful as hell, he said, that's why I'm such a good reporter, Ben, because I'm willing when necessary to fuck my friends. And, that's the condensed version. The full 7-minute version is now lost in the mists of time. Dan Klaidman, welcome to In Lieu of Fun.
What a welcome. I will say a couple of things quickly, which is that I vaguely remember who the source was. I don't know if you do.
I sure do.
but he obviously was a very good source, and you had cultivated him well because he was loyal to you. And secondly, you are obviously an excellent person because all these years later, we remain friends. So
yeah,
he doesn't trust you.
Well, that's nor should he.
Look, clearly. I mean, all is fair in competitive investigative reporting situations. And look, if Dan had been remotely ashamed of it, I would think it was like, okay, I called him on it, but he was kind of proud of it. And so I think it gets to be the mode of my introduction of him until the end of time. Dan, you are now the editor-in-chief of YahooNews and the co-host of Skullduggery. You and Isikoff, your kind of alter ego in reporting all these years, spent some quality time with Tony Fauci this week. Tell us about it. I listened to it on Skullduggery on the drive up to the cabin today, but tell us about it. He didn't seem too happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was my main takeaway. So we did a live stream with him early yesterday morning, and then we ran it on the podcast as well. So a couple of things. First of all, you mentioned Isikoff. The first thing that I realized, and I think everyone who has seen Tony Fauci as much as we have, because he's been ubiquitous, is he is very good at what he does. This is a guy, he has been at the top of the public health, pyramid for, since the Reagan presidency, I guess. And there's a reason why he's been able to stay at the top for so long. He is a very deft politician, and he is an excellent communicator. And to see, Mike Isikoff is one of the great journalistic interrogators that I have ever witnessed. And Fauci was like a bantamweight boxer, bobbing and weaving and dancing. And Isikoff didn't get anything out of him. Of course, Mike was trying to pin him down, get him to criticize Trump, which is how you make news. I tried to do the same thing. He kept joking that I was laying traps for him, and he was evading them with great ease. And so that was kind of fun, just to sort of see him in in person, virtually in person, doing that. But what you said about he is not a happy camper. He is very worried about where we are headed with this virus heading into the winter months. Fauci has been saying for forever now that he wanted to be at this point. He wanted to be at 10,000 cases a day. He'd feel okay, if that's where we were. We are 6 times that right now. I think yesterday, Thursday, we had 65,000 cases in this country. I think that he believes, he didn't quite say this, but I think he believes that, we're going to get, hospitalizations are going up. I think deaths and fatalities have been sort of steady for a while now, in the sort of 700 range. But I think he believes that those are going to are really going to start rising soon, and it's going to be a very, very grim winter before we get a vaccine. We produce enough of a vaccine so that people can get access to it. So that was one takeaway. The other thing is we asked him about the news that had broken over the couple of days before that the Trump White House appeared to be embracing the concept of herd immunity, this idea that you only protect those people who are most vulnerable, i.e. The elderly, people with very severe underlying conditions, and everybody else just let them get the virus, and you get up to 70-80% of the country that has it, and then you develop immunity.
Sorry, really small point of, I thought that herd immunity, I thought herd immunity was the policy that you basically that included vaccines. And so so it was I thought herd immunity was basically if you include vaccines and you include everyone has, immunity, and therefore nothing can be transmitted.
Well, herd immunity isn't a policy, it's a state.
May become part of it, but for all the time before you get the vaccine, people, right?
I get it. So
right.
They're working towards an idea of herd immunity that is gained by people getting the virus and then getting sick and then getting better and being immune, not giving them a vaccine.
Two quick things. Yeah. Kate, one, your volume is really low. You should bring it up a little bit.
Okay, I'll try to do that.
Secondly, herd immunity isn't a policy. It's a state. It's once you reach a certain level of people being immune for any reason, it's very hard for the virus to transmit anymore.
Well, but then the policy is,
the policy is achieving herd immunity through infection.
Right, which means that that is a policy decision to not encourage, all of the mitigation that we are going through now. You say, okay, it's what Sweden is doing, and not to great effect. It's been a fairly disastrous experiment there. They were doing okay in the summer, and they're doing terribly now. In any event, he was scathing. There's also this thing called the Great Barrington Declaration, which is a bunch of people who put out this kind of libertarian document. Some respectable scientists and physicians, at least, some have said that. Fauci did not seem to have a lot of respect for them, and basically he said that anybody who knows anything about epidemiology understands that this is a disastrous public health policy approach, and he said those things in no uncertain terms. By the way, his sort of nemesis in the White House, Dr. Atlas. Scott Atlas, who has sort of replaced him as Trump's chief advisor on the coronavirus task force, is apparently an advocate of this approach. So it may also be personal.
Do you have so did you have time to watch Amy Coney Barrett this week?
I think I maybe on Twitter or maybe watching in lieu of fun. I think I heard you say that you were not going to watch.
I didn't watch 1 minute of it.
if it was a boycott or if you had the insight to realize that it would be a waste of time. You wouldn't really learn very much, or maybe it was both. I kind of dipped in and out, and I read a bunch of. I read some of the transcripts. Again, I don't think you missed very much. I think one thing you missed is in response to a question from Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana. She doesn't have a problem with warm little puppies, but apparently she can't
comment on her view of them as a jurisprudential matter.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Apparently she can comment on chinchillas, which she likes a lot. I mean, this is sort of the apotheosis of, this whole long trajectory going back to Bork, where these Supreme Court nominees have sort of said less and less. But this was to a point of absurdity. I thought. I mean, I think the best example. Well, first of all, the thing I loved was that she shows up with this blank notebook, and the Republicans saw that as evidence that she's so brilliant. She didn't actually need notes. She knows the Constitution so well. But really, to me, I mean, I think I can't remember which one of them. One of them said that. But by the way, I can't remember a Supreme Court nominee who actually had notes at his or her hearing to remind about the Establishment Clause. No, of course not.
Hit her for, but she held up a notebook, blank.
I mean, to me, it was symbolic of how inscrutable she was on all of these questions. And
I read it differently when I saw that she. When I read this, I thought she was for taking names. So.
Right. I thought really the best example of how kind of absurd this has become is when Senator Feinstein asks. I guess the question was essentially whether the president has the constitutional authority to delay the election, because Trump had tweeted that maybe he would do that, or the election should be delayed. And she wouldn't answer that question because she said, well, now that may be an issue that could come before me. Well, I don't really see how that is an issue that comes, Article 2 of the Constitution gives very clearly Congress the authority to set the date of the election, which they did in 1845, and it hasn't changed since then. So, I mean, that's like saying, I can't comment on the sky being blue, right? I mean, it was just ridiculous. So the hearing to me was more interesting for what both sides, and particularly the Democrats, were using it for kind of pure politics. For a presidential election that's looming. Not that I think it's going to change many votes in the presidential election, but more interestingly, in the Senate races. As you probably heard, every Democrat got up there and they talked about the ACA, which may be in jeopardy, may not be in jeopardy. We don't really know. We can get into severability if you want to. Seems like something that we would do on this show. But what was interesting was, there were a bunch of senators, Republicans on that committee who are in tough Senate races, including Lindsey Graham, the chairman of the committee. And so to hear those Democrats talk about the Affordable Care Act and have the exact number of South Carolinians who would lose their health care if the Affordable Care Act was thrown out.
State chosen at random, Dan.
Yeah. Well, it was. I think Kamala Harris mentioned South Carolina, North Carolina. Tom Tillis, of course, is on the committee, and Iowa. I can't remember if Joni Ernst is on the Judiciary Committee, but three states that are, of course, very much in play. 2.5, I guess. South Carolina is not in play, but Graham is in a close race. So that was kind of interesting. But ultimately, wow, is that geese? I think
Ben is being attacked by crows. He has
they're geese. They're geese.
Good work.
God. To be a goose and to be able to, fly south to Florida and not have to worry about coronavirus.
I would worry about other things if I was a goose in Florida. But Ben, sorry, you look like you're about to say something.
No, go ahead.
So I think that I have a question to switch gears for a second, which is I'm very curious to kind of hear if you have kind of any predictions and how Yahoo is planning on kind of reporting out the election. And like how you kind of talk to experts, like who you have weighing in, how you're going to kind of make those calls, whether you're relying on other networks calling it. I'm just like, I have found this to be a fascinating question in this day and age, but then like especially this year.
It's a great question, Kate. Let me give you one example of the challenges. First of all, thank God I have never worked at anywhere where we actually do election calls, because I think that would just be, ever since 2000, that's just such a scary thing to do. But particularly this year, because of, everyone knows, because of mail-in ballots and because we have a president who I think is likely to claim victory before we know anything. But I have been in meetings where we, one of the things every news organization does is it has its election map, which people obsessively look at to see who's winning and to see what the map looks like, the electoral map. And this year it's really challenging because of the huge percentage of votes that are mail-in votes and that are going to come in for the most part late. So one of the challenges is you can wait until all the votes come in and you can turn a state red or turn a state blue. But that means you're going to have a very gray map for a very long time, which is not really engaging for your audience. So what news organizations do is they have a kind of gradation of colors. You have like a light pink, which shows that it would be, in this case, Trump would be leading in, say, Florida.
This is a light pink that you like put up on the site. Like this is for your
on a map on the site.
It's a map on the site, right?
Or a light blue.
I just was curious if like there was something internal that you had before you went public that you were kind of to have conversations around it or something.
And this is all done with just kind of data coming in. It's not manual. It's done automatically. We get these feeds from the AP or from whoever. But in this particular case, what would happen is you might have a map that is a bunch of red states and then a whole bunch of states that are light pink, and then maybe a few blue states and maybe a couple of states that are light blue, and it'll look to everybody, including Donald Trump, like he is about to win this election. And it's
one told him that North Dakota is like an empty bucket of people.
Right. And he'll screenshot it or someone will show him how to screenshot it, and he'll tweet it and he'll declare victory based on the Yahoo News map. And the reality is that like a majority of those states that are colored in light pink are going to be blue because the mail-in ballots are going to be coming in over many hours and days and potentially weeks, and we know that the majority of mail-in ballots are going to be for Joe Biden.
All right,
so that's one one example of what we're facing here.
So I want to tack back here, because when you said that you've never worked for an organization that has an election decision desk, a bunch of people expressed surprise in the chat. So let's do some Yahoo News basics. Why doesn't Yahoo News have a decision desk? And what is the parameters of
nobody
what you guys?
I mean, the
right,
network.
So who does?
And the networks do. The networks do. The AP does. I'm not even
That's
sure.
kind of it.
Yeah, I don't think the New York Times
and the Times
Post,
doesn't make calls.
I don't think they do make those calls themselves.
I mean,
you need a lot of infrastructure, a lot of people, a lot of data.
It's a real time integration of exit polling data with actual returns that you don't build unless it's important to you, unless you have an anchor out there who's got to be the one who says, okay, we've seen enough, we're calling Florida for Trump or something. There's no reason to build it if you can don't have to.
I mean, it's a reasonable. Go ahead. Reasonable question. Now that everybody is reporting in real time in a way that newspapers did not used to. Why big newspapers like the New York Times or the Washington Post haven't started to do that. I got to say, I'm not 100% sure they don't, but I don't think so. So maybe someone on the chat here will correct us. What
does Yahoo News do? Like, what's the parameters of what is inside and outside the coverage area of Yahoo News?
Well, first of all, we're kind of the sort of iconic news aggregator of the internet. One of the first, if not the first, real news aggregator, and that's still, 80% of our business.
Let's not begrudge AOL its due. Come on,
yeah,
people
right.
are still checking.
Well, and AOL is our cousin. We're under the same.
Yep. Bought them.
we're under the same, or they bought us. I mean, it was
whatever.
But actually, we're all owned by Verizon now. So I tease Isikoff that he's just the cable guy now. And as an aggregator, we have evolved a lot. We have a much more kind of premium cable. We've got the New York Times now. We've got the Atlantic, Time Magazine, and dozens and hundreds of other partners. And so that is, and it's kind of one-stop shopping for a very, very large audience. We, by the way, are the Yahoo News network, which also includes HuffPost. That's part of our group. Was just once again, I think this has been true for quite a while, but occasionally we go down to number 2, but we're the number one outlet for news, a digital outlet for news in the country, in terms of our reach, in terms of the number of people who come to our site for news, surpassing CNN, NBC, everyone else. So we're huge, and we are kind of disproportionately big in like the heartland of America. We are so big that we are everywhere, but we are very big in Middle America, which for me is a terrific opportunity, especially these days, as some people have probably heard the term news deserts. There are just a lot of places in the country with diminishing local newspapers and local media, harder for people to get good news, and so it gives us a real opportunity to reach underserved people around the country who, if not for sites like Yahoo News, would be relying entirely, I think, on their Facebook feeds and their Twitter feeds, and would be more susceptible to disinformation and misinformation. And so we see that in this moment we've got a real opportunity to reach people who really do need reliable news. So that's the aggregation. Then there's about 20% of what we put on our site that is original journalism, and we have been building that up over the last few years. It's a small operation, but I like to think of it as kind of like a layer, a very powerful layer of premium journalism on top of the aggregation piece of it. And when I came,
so how many journalists is it?
Well, Yahoo News is somewhere in the range of only 50, 60 journalists. And we've got about 25 reporters and video. That includes video as well. And there's a small Washington bureau chief, small Washington bureau where Isikoff works. We've sort of leaned in on investigative reporting, national security reporting, partly because that's my background, that's Isikoff's background, and we've hired some really terrific reporters under the leadership of Sharon Weinberger, who's one of the great national security editors in the country. And then we do politics because that's
you have Alex Nazarian and
Alex Nazarian, who's a real machine,
terrific,
and who's been covering. Actually, he's been covering the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, and before that, he was all over coronavirus, and he will be again. And really terrific reporters like John Ward, who's one of the best political reporters in the country. One quick story about John Ward. I just had to do a dog and pony show in front of like 90 Verizon vice presidents the other day, and so I had to tout the work that we do. They need to know what actually happens in their far-flung empire, and so I was kind of proselytizing about Yahoo News. But
you can see why you're the editor-in-chief, not Isikoff, because I can imagine you doing that, but boy, could I not imagine Isikoff doing that.
Yeah. He might talk about a lot of the great things he's done. But so the specific thing I was talking about, and this is actually an area that we have really emphasized for the past year, is all the kind of election integrity issues. So, everything from voting rights or voter suppression issues to meddling from foreign countries or hostile actors, to allegations of voter fraud or debunking allegations of voter fraud. And so John Ward, back in April, came to me and said, "I think there's a really important story to be done on coronavirus and the election, because there's already been a trend toward mail-in balloting, but I think it's going to skyrocket. I think there's going to be a huge surge in mail-in balloting because people are going to be afraid to go to the polls." And I was like, okay, it sounded a little kind of dry to me. I wasn't sure if this was a story that would really resonate with our audience, but I trust John, and he's developed an expertise in the whole area of voting. So I said, go for it. And I think the story ran under the headline of, because of pandemic, voting, election results could be delayed a week. And we ran that story. I don't think anyone noticed it. And here we are. This was a couple of months before anyone had actually written that story. The Washington Post did it, I think, in the summer. Here we are all these months later, and it's the only thing anyone's been talking about. And so that's just to say that, Ben, how much of an evangelist I am about reporting and original reporting, that, if you hire good reporters, if you let them develop some expertise, if you let them pound the pavement, and if you trust them, you're going to be able to do good journalism that has some impact. And that's what we try to do. And we're small. I hope that we can kind of scale up. But it's a pretty powerful combination to have, all of these great partners, and then to have a team of really great enterprising reporters as well.
Yeah, so this is fascinating because I started my career at abcnews.com. I got out of college and that was the first place. And I was an original reporter for abcnews.com.
Yeah.
And abcnews.com was really not, it was like the redheaded stepchild in the basement of ABC News. And like no one took it seriously. And like
Right.
no one took web seriously. This was 2006 and like it was not a thing. And but it was really fascinating, like what went up on the website. And I've kind of always thought about this. And there was obviously syndication. There was like Reuters and like AP and it was Getty Photos and it was like all of these things in slideshows. And then there was like a small amount of original reporting. And there was the large amount of like ABC News reporting that like the network was doing, like the TV. And half my job, fascinatingly, was, now I had actually forgotten this until I started telling the story, was to transcribe and turn into a story the audio of like an interview or the audio of like a story. So what's interesting about this to me is like how you're coming, like now I feel like ABC News to a large extent is a news aggregator through syndication or through other types of things.
Yeah.
You are a news aggregator, not necessarily through syndication, but just really through all of the internet, right? And I'm curious about like, what is different about a news aggregator and and syndication? Like, I think that to a layperson, they appear to be very similar types of things. Like you run a Reuters story and everyone runs the same Reuters story, right? You take a link from the New York Times, you put it on your front page as like a story. Like how is syndication working differently in the age of news aggregation?
Well, I mean, I think of syndication as, you're a news organization. I mean, I remember years ago when I worked at the Washington Post, they had something called I can't remember what it was called now, but basically it was the Washington Post created all this great content and they wanted
the Washington Post Writers Group.
There was the Washington Post Writers Group. I guess they wanted to syndicate their journalism to get as much exposure as they could. It's kind of we're the inverse of that, which is that we are the syndicatee. We're taking it all and aggregating it and putting it in one place, a little like, sort of a supermarket, right? But, Kate, talking about the early days of ABC and, the internet versus the legacy piece of it made me think of a story that I think you guys will find amusing. And
I should tell you my tigers and pigs and tiger costume story. That's a good
okay.
story.
All right. After this one, I want to. Sounds pretty good. But not too long after I left Legal Times and went to Newsweek, so I left in '96. By '98, Isikoff was reporting the Monica Lewinsky story, who at the time we only knew of as I think she was woman number 3 because Linda Tripp was. Let's see, who was woman number 1 was Paula Jones. Woman number 2 was Kathleen Willey, and then woman number 3 was Monica Lewinsky. He did not tell anybody her name because he was being very, very secretive about his reporting. And then, of course, he learns that Ken Starr is investigating Clinton's affair with Monica Lewinsky, and the whole thing obviously becomes a huge story. Now, it had not actually, some of you will remember, Ben certainly will remember, that we lost our scoop to Matt Drudge. We held the story. We were going to hold it for another week to do more reporting. It was a mistake. Mike and I said we had everything we needed for the story, but our editors chose to hold it for another week. In those days, we were a weekly magazine. So you just say, okay, well, let's wait for the next, the whole weekly cycle. Well, we had a website at the time. It was a Comcast, dial-up thing. And someone said, well, why don't we not wait the full week? Why don't we put the story we have, once we have it, on the website? And everyone was like, what? and it's hard to remember this, but most news organizations back in the late 90s did not use their websites for any original journalism, exclusive journalism. They only used it to republish what was, in the magazine, or in the case of a television, station, I guess, what they had put on air. So the following Tuesday, we ran a 10,000-word story revealing all of the sordid details of the Starr investigation, and Monica Lewinsky, and the blue dress, everything. And it was literally the first time we'd ever used the Newsweek.com site for a story that was not already published. Which is just crazy to think about that. All right, I've lost you.
I remember that vividly.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I couldn't hear Kate.
Yeah.
Oh, Kate is muted because she was typing.
Oh, okay. And then there are all these other nice people who.
Those are the people who are going to ask questions, and we're going to go to them momentarily.
Nice.
I remember that vividly. It was like, the Drudge scooped you, and then Woodward scooped you, and then
yeah. I don't think it was
you
Woodward.
guys.
Yeah, the Washington Post and ABC. Once Drudge reported that Newsweek had spiked. That was his word. Had spiked the story of the president and the intern. Then, of course, all these other outlets knew that there was a president and an intern.
Then they went after it.
They were able to get it. Yeah.
But that was like on a Monday morning, and then you guys came in on Tuesday with this giant tome.
Yeah.
And it was a big moment in the history of the web as a news thing.
Yep.
I mean, it was like when we were all like, okay, there's a new kid on the block, and it's like anybody can publish anything if they can really do the reporting.
Yep.
So Dan has a hard stop at in a few minutes. So let's go to questions.
I can go to 7:05.
We will go to 7:05. Anne, the floor is yours.
Hello. Daniel Klaidman. Hello.
Hi.
Do you recognize me?
You look really familiar, but I don't have my glasses on.
Anne.
Oh my God, Anne.
Hi.
So did you overlap with
No,
Ben?
I didn't. No.
I didn't think so.
Did
Long
you guys
story.
date or something?
No. We worked at Legal Times together. Anne was like my first friend when I got to Legal Times, straight out of college.
Wait, you're Anne Kornheiser?
Yes. Sorry.
I didn't. You've just been Anne K the whole time. And you say you're a historian, and we didn't actually work together.
She has a PhD. She's a big deal.
I am a historian. I left Legal Times and went to graduate school.
You didn't tell me that you worked at Legal Times and that I know your name from that. You've been keeping secrets.
I'm sorry.
Like Mr. Botts, who hasn't been willing to admit the way his name is pronounced.
Well, I actually tried to change my last name. I mean, my name in lieu of fun, but I couldn't. Anyway.
Anne was a great reporter. She covered the liberal interest. I mean, among other things, she covered the liberal interest groups. And this was all the post-Bork era. So all of those, the Ralph Neese and Nan Aaron and all of those groups that were really leading the charge in the judicial confirmation wars, and most of them are still at it, which is amazing.
Yeah, I can't believe Nan is still around. Anyway,
yeah, she's still there.
I thought it would be interesting to ask you, Danny, as I used to call you, if that's okay.
Everyone still calls me Danny.
Okay. So I was thinking so you and I probably last saw each other in 1991, which is a scary thought. That's the year I left.
Wow.
Yeah. So since then, the Supreme Court has totally changed and become this entrenched, conservative institution.
My God. Yeah.
I know. And I'm just wondering what you think of all the there are a lot of different reasons for that, but, conservative legal movement, the reaction to the Bork hearings, the luck of Republican presidents, but I'm wondering what you think about, what's sort of the most important factors in that transformation.
Yeah, I mean, look, some of it is luck in the sense that Obama got 2 appointments, but he didn't. But they were both. I guess if the court was for all that time had a liberal majority, and the liberals on the court were older. I mean, it's just do the math and who died and who didn't, and which presidents were in office when they died and got the opportunity to appoint replacements. I think it's probably more that, although I don't, I think it is true that the conservatives, first of all, who felt disenfranchised, they didn't control Congress for all that, for 40, 50 years they were in the wilderness, and I think they understood early on that they needed to have a project to win back power, and they saw that the courts were probably the best opportunity for them, and so they did create this machinery and pipeline that now everyone saw Sheldon Whitehouse talk about, in the Amy Coney Barrett hearings with dark money and all of these groups. But I think it is the different factors that you mentioned. I'd be curious what Ben or Kate think, but I think it's just a combination of those factors. I don't know that there's anything else that would explain it.
I agree with that. I think it's a huge amount of it is luck. Republicans have gotten many more appointments than they should have based on the number of presidential elections they've won. It's also about focused attention and ideological clarity. They have a much better sense than liberals about what they're looking for. And there's a certain amount of it that's about electoral power playing and just sort of political power playing and prioritizing it in a more aggressive way than liberals do. I think it's not a whole lot more complicated than
right.
that.
I mean, I don't know. It may be that if the Democrats had I can't think of an analogous situation where if the Democrats had a Senate Majority Leader who was as ruthless and willing to play raw politics as Mitch McConnell, they would have been able to ram through nominees. Obviously, if they had controlled the Senate, for more of Obama's 2 terms, Merrick Garland would be on the court.
Right. So I'm going to jump Tony Cava to the front of the queue because he's going to ask a question that is closely related to one of the ones that I'm sure is something close to Danny's heart and is something I should have asked him about before, which is some of their disinformation reporting. So, Tony, the floor is yours.
Oh, thanks a lot. I'm looking for it because I can't quite remember it. You've made me all missed. My question is basically, this is something I'd love to ask pretty much any reporting person you have on the show, but I'm wondering if you can discuss what, if any, protocols new media in general and Yahoo News in particular have put in place to guard against being duped into amplifying active measures on the part of Russia or any other player.
Yeah. Well, Yahoo is we're pretty sensitive on this issue because you may recall that in the last election cycle, first of all, Yahoo was hacked by the Russians, and I can't remember what the number. Some stunning number of Yahoo email accounts were hacked. I mean, millions and millions. And we've got very robust security, strong relationships with law enforcement, the intelligence community, the sort of cyber community. I know, in fact, I was just doing a presentation earlier this week with a guy named Sean Zadig, who is kind of runs that operation for us. It's called the Paranoids, by the way. That's the name of the internal cybersecurity operation. The subject was election integrity. And so we were talking about these issues. The whole, look, there's no fail-safe. We are hardening our defenses all the time. But as you know, it's this, kind of arms race that's going on, and the other side is doing the same thing, and they're often ahead of the game. So there's no way to ensure, that we're going to be able to protect all of our infrastructure against, against attacks. If you're asking about the journalism, the thing that really worries me is on the video side. I'm very worried about deep fakes. I'm not sure that they are. Part of the challenge for Yahoo as an aggregator is, we have. It's not just what we produce. I feel like we've got great editors. I'm always talking to them about being careful about these kinds of things, making sure that there's nothing that seems suspicious, that seems like it could be some kind of a influence operation. But the number of stories and videos that come through our pipes is just, you can't imagine it. It's every day, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of stories that are coming in. Now, we're not legally responsible for them. We're indemnified, but we have an ethical obligation to do everything we possibly can to make sure that we're not the targets of disinformation campaigns. And we have, there have been some, there was something that happened a few months ago. Unfortunately, I'm not remembering right now what it was, but, we learned about it and we immediately reached out to the partner. It took a while for the partner to realize that it was fake. We eventually just took it off the site. But it is a huge challenge, and we need to be really, really constantly vigilant about it.
And I know we have two questions, but I kind of am desperate to tell my pig and tiger costume story now.
Sure.
I'll make it really fast. So when I was at ABC News, there was a producer who was very senior, and a VP at ABC News sent a forwarded, this was in the days where most kind of viral news you got was through chainmail. And so the VP forwarded to the news desk at abcnews.com this viral email that was a bunch of pictures of pigs in tiger costumes nursing at a mother tiger. And I was in charge of slideshows. And so the senior producer was do this and do it now, turn this into a slideshow. And I'm like, we don't have rights to these photos and I don't know how to do this. And then also this just sends my spidey sense into thinking that this is all made up and this isn't a real thing. Oh, there was an accompanying story about how all of these piglets, their mother had died. And so they had let them suckle at a tiger mom whose cubs had died, and so they had bonded and she didn't eat them and this whole thing. And I was like, this reeks of bullshit, and this is just, anyways, turns out it is it was total bullshit. I googled pigs in tiger costumes, and the first thing that came up even then was Snopes, this is fake, it's a zoo in Thailand, and whatever. And so And I was like, I'm not publishing these. It's going to get us in trouble. We're going to get sued. These photos belong to this zoo in Thailand that I can't get in touch with because it's the middle of the night there and like whatever. And I just got lambasted by this senior producer who was just like, you can't take direction. You don't understand authority. When the vice president of ABC sends you something, you publish it on your site. Like, this is like, he wants it done. I'm like, this is fake. And so like, there's just like, but it wasn't fake. Like, I want to actually like put this forward. Like, the pictures were not fake. They were not doctored, but they were constructed. Like, and the story did not match the pictures. Like, there was all of these things. And that is actually the really hard thing, I think, even beyond deepfake still, is like the story of something versus a real video of something. Like, you get a text of something or an explanation of something. The video itself might actually be genuine. But like the explanation of what's happening in it or what it's standing for is entirely separate.
Yeah. Let me add one more point, which is that one of the things that we've done is we have really scaled back almost entirely on user-generated content. That is just not part of our model anymore. And we've even, and this was pretty controversial, and a lot of our users are not happy about it. We disabled comments. Now that wasn't, and Yahoo comments, have been kind of a thing for a long time, and they're pretty toxic. Not always. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff, good stuff on the comments as well. But it has always been part of what has engaged our users, because not everyone has comments anymore, and it allows people to really interact and to have a voice. We just, we made the decision that things had gotten so toxic, and there were so many threats to our own reporters that until we could figure out a way to really moderate the comments, that we were going to disable them. And but the added reason to do that, the added benefit to taking them down, particularly right before an election in this crazy time that we're in, it's one less avenue for bad actors to spread disinformation on our site.
All right, we got time for two more questions, and we're going to get them both in. Christopher.
Thank you, Ben. Hi, Daniel. As a former journalist myself, Medill School graduate, started my career at NBC News the summer before 9/11. I think a lot about Leslie Stahl's anecdote that Trump told her he calls the media fake news so that when they report something damaging about him, the public won't believe it. This assault on the mainstream media won't end with Trump's presidency. So is it up to the public officials, journalists, both, or others to restore America's trust in the free press? And how do we rebuild that trust?
Oh boy. Well, it also, that question, it's a kind of a profound question, because it also raises the question of whether, does Trumpism survive Trump? And the answer, I think, is yes. But I kind of hope that he is, Trump is the most kind of outrageous, and sort of it's the most purest distilled form of Trumpism, that whichever presidents come next will not be anything like him. And so maybe there will be an opportunity to kind of rebalance things a little bit. But we just had Mike Abramowitz, who's the head of Freedom House, the president of Freedom House, on our podcast last week or the week before. And we were talking about the corrosive impact that Trump has had on in terms of sowing distrust in the media, not just in America but around the world, and the number of dictators who now use the term fake news because they've been given this kind of permission structure from Donald Trump, the thing that's frustrating to me is, as well as we do our jobs, And I think by and large, journalists at mainstream news organizations, even with all of the kind of commercial incentives that we all have to deal with, we do try to report fairly straight. We do try to report accurately. We are penalized and punished when we make mistakes. People lose their jobs. There is accountability. So, I think we are doing mostly the things that we should be doing to maintain trust in among Americans. But we're in a moment in our history, for all the reasons that everyone on this live stream knows about, polarization and the fragmentation of media, and technology and the role of social platforms and social media, that there are just all of these kind of structural challenges that I don't really know how we get beyond. I do think the social media platforms are a big part of it, and I'm glad that there is a lot of discussion now about not kind of, for example, like just getting rid of Section 203 but figuring out ways to do sort of smart regulating, for example, the algorithms, which obviously privilege information that is not necessarily true, that is hotter, outright lies, conspiracy theories. So much of that does damage to the reputation of the rest of us, that I hope we can find ways to kind of attack those kind of bigger structural issues, which isn't to say that we don't have a role in maintaining trust by continuing to do good work, but it's bigger than that.
All right, David Botts, you get the last question.
Thanks so much for coming on. What do you see in the future? What does media and reporting look like 5 years from today? And do you have any words to say about somebody who's left us, who's, I think the local reporter is almost gone now?
Yeah. Well, that is the thing that I worry about most. Earlier in the show, I was talking about news deserts a little bit, and we actually had Charlotte Alter on our podcast. If you guys don't know who Charlotte Alter is, she's a terrific young reporter for Time Magazine. She's also the daughter of John Alter, who I used to work with at Newsweek, who was a great journalist. Charlotte did a piece on. So this I'm telling you this story because I think it says something both optimistic about where we are in journalism and the future of journalism, and something fairly pessimistic. She went to Wisconsin. She's covering the campaign. She went to Wisconsin to report on the sort of proliferation of disinformation and conspiracy theories, QAnon, all of those kinds of things. I think she talked to something like 500 voters when she was there, and she said maybe it was more than that. Actually, I think it was more. It was a team of reporters. They may have talked to more like 1,000 voters, and a team of and I think she said a full 20% of the voters that they talked to essentially subscribed to QAnon or some version of the QAnon conspiracy theories, and they were talking about Joe Biden, kidnapping children and drinking blood.
They are so tasty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but do not say that like reclining into darkness.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. I was going to say, you look
like
a little...
children's blood, so tasty.
And when we asked her, the kind of, at the end of the interview with Charlotte, we asked her, what the sort of prescriptive element here is. Well, what do we do about this? And the first thing she said was restore local journalism. that she also talked about the social media platforms, about algorithms. But she said she thinks that one of the most important things that we can do is to restore, local journalism around the country. Whether it's nonprofits. There are some really great outfits out there who are finding ways to bring good journalists to do. It's almost like a Peace Corps for journalism.
And there's the Texas Tribune, which is super inspiring.
Tribune, yeah. But her point was that too many people in this country have become reliant on their Facebook feeds and Rush Limbaugh and InfoWars and Donald Trump's Twitter feed, and that until we can give people access to credible journalism in their own communities, we're not going to be able to solve this problem. Now, that might sound a little naive, but I do think it is a piece of it. The optimistic part of it is that you do have young, very talented journalists like Charlotte Alter, who are going out there, who are reporting these stories, who are hugely committed, and I don't know if Ben, you have this experience, but I still am amazed at how many young journalists reach out to me, or college students
every day,
reach out to me
all the time.
How can I get into journalism? People still want to, and so that's an encouraging sign.
All right, we got to let Danny go. You'll come back because we still won't be allowed to have fun anymore.
I have a lot
pretty
more
soon.
questions for you.
Good. Anytime. It's fun.
It's really fun to have you.
In lieu of fun, but yeah.
Okay, right. In lieu of fun.
Are you wearing a red jumpsuit like in Royal Tenenbaums?
Oh, that's my favorite movie.
You look like you are.
Yeah, and I kind of have the Uzi and Ari hair too going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this is like a retro tracksuit. Yeah.
Yeah, you should do this.
Very
this is
cool.
Your Halloween costume. I just did it for you. It's awesome.
So we will be back tomorrow. It'll be Saturday, so it'll be just Kate and me. It will be back at our regular time, which is to say that'll be 21 hours and 51 minutes from now.
I don't know if I can sleep that long.
Yeah. And until then, we don't have fun anymore, but we do have sources who will protect us against theft from rival reporters.
You're never.
See you later, Dan. Thanks for doing it.
I deserve it. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.